Well, it's been quite a week for US President Joe Biden, first pardoning his son Hunter before falling asleep on the job. Joining me live is US expert and former Labor Senator Stephen Loosley. Stephen, great to have you on the program as always. What did you think of Joe Biden pardoning his son?
I thought he was always going to pardon Hunter. During the course of the election campaign, he repeatedly said that he would not. But I always thought that his affection for his son was going to overcome any doubts about the exercise of the power, because he was having a circumstance where Hunter was facing jail time and the campaign against him would continue, and that campaign would be focused also on other members of the Biden family. So I was not particularly surprised. It is damaging to the presidential legacy, but over time this will fade as against other episodes in the Biden administration's term in office. So not a surprise there. What is surprising are these anticipatory pardons that are being considered by the Biden administration to protect people who may be under threat from an incoming Trump administration.
And many, as we saw in that story prior to us having a chat, don't want it. And you can understand why they wouldn't want it. There's some that probably would, but others wouldn't, because it does sort of point to some sort of level of guilt.
Well, it can be interpreted as an admission of guilt, but you have a circumstance, for example, in which the nominee Kash Patel to head the FBI published a list of enemies in a book a while back, and he's reported to have said, "We're coming after you. We're coming after you under criminal law or civil law. We haven't yet worked that out." There's actually no suggestion of a crime having been committed. And people like a former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, for example, is clearly in the sights of some in the incoming Trump administration, probably including the president, for the simple fact that she opposed Donald Trump during various hearings on January 6th on the invasion of the Capitol. So when people are looking in government to pursue people for political perspectives or political decisions, that's a very dark space. So you can imagine that President Biden is looking at what might be done to protect people, including people in the American military, I might add.
What about the Democratic Party? How do they rebuild from here? And in your view, you follow this very closely, US politics, are they at rock bottom?
No, but they've been very much damaged by the failure in not only the presidential election campaign, where Donald Trump comprehensively beat Vice President Harris, but the Republicans now have both the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they have a Supreme Court which in large measure is aligned with the views of the incoming administration. So they are behind the eight ball, to use the classic American expression. What they need to do, in my view, Tim, is to look back at their own history towards the 1980s, where a fellow by the name of Al Fromm set about forming a body which became known as the Democratic Leadership Council. And it was an effort to centre the party and to have it occupy the mainstream in American political life. That saw Bill Clinton elected president in 1992 after a string of losses to Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. So that effort to bring the moderates in the party together, to centre the party in terms of policy and performance, and to reach out to a lot of Americans in that middle ground who may well feel unrepresented. That's the best way to go. It's worked previously. There's no reason it can't work again.
Yeah, we'll watch that space with interest. Finally, just back to the Republicans. It seems like Ron DeSantis is right in the mix now, isn't he, to come in as a Donald Trump pick?
Very likely. Pete Hegseth is struggling despite his bravado in the halls of the Capitol. There's an article in the New Yorker just recently, which is really quite devastating in terms of a very checkered history of the nominee for Defence Secretary. So if we saw President-elect Trump turn to Governor DeSantis, there would be very few surprises there. And you may have observed that Florida has become increasingly important in Republican Party politics. Not only does the President-elect live there at Mar-a-Lago, but a number of prominent Republicans have been included in the batch of nominees going forward. And seems to be a determined effort by Donald Trump to stamp his authority on the Florida Republican Party for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. They are interesting times. Stephen, always great to chat. Thank you.
Pleasure, Tim. All the best.